I'd get kicked out to the hall because I would be too disagreeable. And I remember some of these teachers, they were so nasty, they were so left-wing, some of them were actual communists. I remember I went to Wheeling High School, which is in the suburbs of Chicago, which was a great school when I went there. Unfortunately, it's gone incredibly woke the last couple of years. It's so hard to watch. I'm sure a lot of people in your audience have similar stories of a school they remember that they went to, and it was just a normal Midwest school when I went there.
Charlie Kirk is here today. Charlie, so good to see you. How have you been, brother?
Thank you. I've been great. Thank you, guys. And thank you for your wonderful support of liberty and of everything we're doing at Turning Point USA. So great to see both of you and honored to be here today.
You know, you've been through a pretty big cancellation journey. I mean, you've got colleges that will not allow you to step foot on their campus. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Oh yeah, I mean, it's just kind of part of the game. You know, there's many university campuses that will not allow me or allow Turning Point USA to exist or to have any sort of presence, including a lot of the Ivy League schools and a lot of the schools in the Northeast. But you know, we take it in good stride. It actually makes us stronger. It builds our character. The more that people try to push back against us or censor us or cancel us. And you know, we have to understand that even though that we are in the intellectual minority, and even though we are not necessarily you know, in control of these institutions, the more they push back against us, the stronger we become.
Take us back to Twitter before it was X. It's my understanding that you were massively Shadowban, and what that means is that you might have a huge number of followers, and you post something, but it gets like practically no reach. When did that happen, and how bad was it?
Yeah, it was bad. I mean, look, I'll tell you that not only that, I lost access to my Twitter account before Elon actually purchased it. I was not only shadow banned, but I said something about Rachel Levine or whatever, Mr. Levine, the rear admiral who was in the military and the Navy, and it was a man who thought he was a woman. That whole kind of ridiculous situation that we saw.
And health too, right?
Yes, that's right. It's very, you know, the body, the embodiment of American health, right, in one picture. And so I sent out a tweet saying this is a man who's pretending he is a woman, and I lost my Twitter account. And so it was actually one of the best things that ever happened to me, because while I was kind of in the wilderness and I was kind of without a Twitter account, which, by the way, prior to that, you know, 5, 6, 7, 8 years prior, I had one of the most successful Twitter accounts during the Trump era, very well followed, very engaged, you know, lot of social media, let's just say, success that we enjoyed. And so all of a sudden I was without a Twitter account, like, how am I gonna get my message out? Well, we really had to develop other platforms, other mediums to be able to spread our message, to be able to kind of communicate. And that's where we discovered Rumble, we discovered Getter, we built an even greater Instagram portfolio, we even expanded to TikTok, we expanded all sorts of different platforms. And eventually, by the time Elon bought Twitter, it only made us even more popular and more viral.
Was there ever a point where, I mean, I know you, and I probably know the answer to this, where you were like bummed out or dejected or felt a little bit helpless or hopeless?
A little bit, yeah. I could tell you that there was definitely a time where, when I was kicked off of X, it was like directionless, right? It was trying to find my place or trying to find how we were going to get our voice out. And I wasn't necessarily worried about, you know, are we going to make a difference? It was more just about the audience that we had built there would no longer be able to hear us, and the kind of be able to nurture, you know, that kind of, you know, that kind of community and that kind of engagement. And so there was definitely a moment after I lost access to my Twitter account, and that was a quite, you know, long period of time. And understand that, you know, we knew that we were being shadow banned. We knew that we were being censored. We knew that we were being treated poorly. But of course, everyone called us conspiracy theorists at the time. And as we joke around, just wait 3 years, every conspiracy theory becomes true. And so this one in particular, we knew that there was some real dark stuff going on, that there was some real nonsense, and there was some real under the table type of dealings. Turns out we were right when Elon Musk, and he deserves such great credit for this, bought Twitter and liberated the speech in the West, and all the Twitter files, the X files were released. It turned out that, yes, my account was singled out for specific censorship and shadow banning, and we were put on a Twitter blacklist. And so, but again, it only made us have to be more creative, more entrepreneurial. It required us to be to not like bend a knee and to because here's the thing is when I lost access to my Twitter account, there was an opportunity that was presented to us where I could have deleted the tweet and I could have got my Twitter account back. But I refused to do that. I said, I'm not going to delete my tweet. I'm not going to pander. I'm not going to, say something I don't believe. And I'm not going to surrender just so I can get access to my Twitter account back.
I think that's the right thing to do. I mean, we have to stand our ground. If you think about what has happened to us, I mean, it really is communism. To cancel a voice of one side of the equation is the definition of communism. You've been called all sorts of names. Fascist, racist. How do you deal with that? To our viewers out there that have been canceled and have been called these sort of names online, how do you combat that? What do you do, especially when you're on campus and you get this extreme hate thrown at you?
Yeah, so there's a really good quote from my dear friend Dennis Prager, and we should all pray for Dennis Prager because he's not in a great place right now. He's going through a very difficult recovery after a terrible fall. But Dennis Prager, who's a great friend and mentor, used to say, if you're in public life and you are fighting for truth, you do not allow the compliments to go to your head or the insults to go to your heart. And it is a beautiful quote because honestly, when people insult me, it means absolutely nothing. Like literally, it has no bearing whatsoever on my direction, on my sense of purpose, or my sense of identity. It is kind of a badge of honor in a lot of different ways. I just don't care what people call me. It means really next to nothing. So they call you Six Herb, which is sexist, intolerant, xenophobic. Kind of the acronym of all the different accusations they could call you. And it is a thought terminating cliche when they throw that at you. They want you to try to shut up. It is a form of censorship, and it really is inherently totalitarian.
You're loving this. I know you. She's wired just like you. When all this was going down, if my math is correct, you must have been like 22 or 23 with a growing organization. How were you always like this as a kid, trying to brush things off, or did you have to develop this skill, develop a thick skin? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's a good question. I definitely had to develop that, when you're young, you definitely want to be liked by your friends and you want to be liked by your community. But there were definitely many moments as I was growing up where there was conscious decisions that I made where I decided to take the road less traveled or the harder path or the more difficult path, regardless of the kind of societal or the kind of cost or the price associated with that. Growing up in high school, I was definitely very outspoken. I would get in a lot of debates with my teachers. I'd get kicked out to the hall because I would be too disagreeable. And I remember some of these teachers, they were so nasty, they were so left-wing, some of them were actual communists. I remember I went to Wheeling High School, which is in the suburbs of Chicago, which was a great school when I went there. Unfortunately, it's gone incredibly woke the last couple of years. It's so hard to watch. I'm sure a lot of people in your audience have similar stories of a school they remember that they went to. And it was just a normal Midwest school when I went there. A lot of kids from different backgrounds, a lot of kids that had, diverse views and different races. I was actually a minority when I went to my high school. It was a majority Hispanic high school, but nobody really cared. It was not a race-obsessed type high school. Growing up in that environment, despite some of the great teachers, I learned very quickly that there were some very, very left-wing teachers, like incredibly, almost like violent to their views, where they would do everything they possibly could to prevent you from speaking, to prevent free speech and dialogue. And I really developed the sense of not just purpose, but fortitude to stand up against them.
So censorship is still, going crazy. I mean, we try and post certain videos, and now AI basically completely scans, especially YouTube. And there was one video we tried to post.
Yeah, one of our early episodes, we posted it, and YouTube gobbled it up and evaluated it. I'm sure summarized it, decided there was offending content in there.
Would you remember what it was? So it was very basic too. It wasn't even anything.
No, I don't remember the episode, but it said the timestamps of where the offending content was, and then gave us a strike, all without human intervention. So cancellation is going to another level now. When they talk about the robots controlling us, I think that this might be one of the first, is the robots are making decisions about what our voice, what can be heard and what cannot be heard.
So
That's scary.
And my question is, what
right.
can we do about this? I want you to, can you educate our audience? How could we fight back? What can we do?
Yeah, I mean, as far as the YouTube question is very hard. I mean, we're very popular on YouTube. We have millions of subscribers. We get over 1 billion views on YouTube. But we have to play the game. I'm very honest with everybody. We post content that is within their quote-unquote guidelines, and we do so intentionally because we believe the upside of being able to reach the audience is greater than the downside of having no channel whatsoever. So every channel we're posting different types of content, and we try to funnel it. Look, Google is very influential. They could do whatever they want. And look, there have been attempts to try to build Rumble, and I've been very involved in trying to get Rumble off the ground and trying to get Rumble created. We still have a long way to go there. But look, as far as how we're going to navigate YouTube, it is a very, very difficult task. I think the government definitely has some form of a role. I'm working with the Trump administration on some of the tech side of that to try to balance the speech on some of these platforms and make sure that accounts are being restored. But look, it is a problem I hear from a lot of different people. The way we navigate it is that we just post kind of our more agreeable, non-controversial content on YouTube. It's not a perfect solution, but if we were to just post everything, we would get 3 strikes, you're out, and we'd have no impact on YouTube. And that's probably a bad move, given that we're reaching over 1 billion people a year and helping change young minds, and we're very viral. I don't like it. It's a form of, unfortunately, of self-censorship, and it is totalitarian in nature. But I will say, though, that we could say whatever we want on X. Instagram has improved a lot. Rumble, you could say whatever you want. And I think that's a very important thing, that we have to go to the platforms that reward us and really emphasize them and make them pinnacles of free speech.
But the government granted special rights to social media companies. What was it? The Section
Communications
230
Act
or something like that?
Yeah.
So
230.
Why can't they make it where if they are censoring people this way, they get that right taken away?
Yeah, they can. They could take away Section 230 protections from the Communication Decency Act. So just so your audience understands it, there's 2 different types of mass communication companies. You could be a platform or you could be a publisher. And so a publisher is like the New York Times or Fox News, which means that they are liable, they could be held liable, and they are responsible for what is said on their airwaves. So for example, if Fox News or let's just say the New York Times, a great example. So when the New York Times and CNN went after that young man from Kentucky, Nicholas Sandmann, and called him all those, do you remember that whole story with the guy who was banging the drum in his face and he was wearing the MAGA hat, the Covington Catholic story, right? Yeah. That was like 6 years ago.
Yeah.
He won a major financial settlement, right? A significant financial settlement, because they are liable for what happens on their communication pathways. What a platform is, though, is what the Communications Decency Act did in Section 230, is it carved out a separate caveat, which is that they're not responsible for what happens on their platform. So Facebook and Instagram are not responsible for the posts that are made or the comments that are made. In some ways, I see that argument. I have some sympathy for it because there's a lot of lunatics out there on like comment boards, and you don't want. In some ways, it would actually be less pro-free speech. However, here is what is correct, and this is where you guys are spot on, is that the government has afforded them special privileges that have allowed them to become multi-trillion-dollar companies. And insofar, like a great example is this, and is that during COVID, this was the most, like, let's just say, easy example, because everyone says, oh, you know, it's not free speech, but no. During COVID, where there were robust alternative narratives that were popping up on how to treat COVID early, on how to intervene. I mean, you guys know this. You've done wonderful work, and your school is incredible, and I love visiting it, and you guys are very health focused. But during COVID, and I would make this argument repeatedly, and I mean this, is that I believe, I want to make sure, I would say millions of people in the world unnecessarily died because of the lack of free speech. How many people's lives could have been saved with vitamin D supplementation, with an understanding that obesity was linked to COVID, with hydroxychloroquine or ivermectin or quercetin or intravenous therapies, or understanding that a little bit of steroid supplementation could have helped, or that that ventilators actually were not very good for you, and that early intervention with COVID is key. All that stuff, right?
Yeah.
Or
So-
that actually we shouldn't have had masks. Go ahead.
Yeah, so that content that we just recorded, is that something we need to remove from our upload to YouTube? And what is their algorithm going to say about the stuff you just said?
No, but it's fine
So,
now.
yeah, what I just said
It was
is,
back then during
Yeah.
an emergency, they literally would not allow the other side to be to go out there because they wanted to direct everybody in one direction.
Yeah, but he's saying that
You're both
if
right.
if that voice
don't
was
care
heard,
anymore.
then millions of people might have lived. And so I don't know what the algorithm is going to say. Like, wow, he just made an allegation that if this content was on, then
No.
I'm just curious his thoughts.
well, it depends. You're not wrong. So I don't know if you guys plan to post this on YouTube or not, but I don't seek to try to get you a strike. But I'm speaking as if this won't be posted on YouTube. There are some like no-go things on YouTube. Anything regarding like transgenderism, or like there's some topics that they'll just give you a strike. The vaccine stuff, they've actually relaxed a lot in the last year and a half. I mean, it was totalitarian. It was authoritarian during COVID. Now it's a little murky, so I encourage your team should just read the community guideline policy now. But think about during COVID how immoral it was, where you have real doctors, board certified doctors that are seeing real patients, that are seeing real results. They're saying, hey, I'm giving hydroxychloroquine, I'm giving zinc, I'm giving vitamin D, I'm doing all these different things, and the outcomes are really good. And you are not allowed to get that message out.
Here's a question for you. Who's writing your story, you or some random dude on the internet? If you're sick of Google, gossip blogs, or that one angry ex controlling how the world sees you, it's time to do something about it. Erase.com helps you take back your narrative by removing harmful content, outdated info, and straight-up lies from search engines. Your past shouldn't be a permanent headline. Erase.com gives you the reset button that the internet forgot to include. So don't let the web define you. Go to erase.com, use code ERASED for 10% off, and start owning your story today. Links in the description. Click it. Your future self will thank you.
That is immoral. Now, the intent of the social media companies were, well, if we allow these other theories, then a lot of people are going to die. Ironically, a lot of people died because they didn't allow all these other theories. And so I still believe that one of the great injustices from these social media companies is the fact of what they did during COVID and what we allowed them to do to us. It's one of the great it is one of the great injustices that we've still allowed to stand, unfortunately.
Well, even with the vaccines today, you know, like I have my own show, and my own show is only going to be able to be on Rumble. Why? Because I've got doctors
Correct.
on my show that I'm interviewing them, and they're going over data. They're going over actual facts about, you know, and I won't get into it too much because Dave is looking at me like, you know,
I want to have an
put
episode
this out.
on YouTube.
Yeah. So
Something.
so
And I
my
want to be more than 6 minutes
all
long.
of my shows have to go on Rumble, and it's sad because we need to allow people to have the information, and we need to let them be adults and make the decision that they want to make. We cannot force them to listen to one side of the equation. It's not right. Meanwhile,
Correct.
on Instagram, there's like pornography. There's people that
Oh
are
my God.
naked.
That's-
So
yeah.
why are they the judge and jury over what gets said? It's not right. It makes
I'm
me
not buying
crazy.
it that they're concerned about, it goes against the CDC. I think that they're very politically oriented.
And they've been bought. They've been bought. Their biggest client is
And I'm not
Fox.
buying Mark Zuckerberg recently is saying stuff like, well, it was wrong and I didn't really agree with it, but I sort of had to do it. No, he should have grown a set, at the right time. It would have done wonders for humanity. I mean, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I look, there's a lot of differences in where the platforms stand now. On a spectrum, to Instagram's credit, which is under Mark's jurisdiction, we could say a lot more on Instagram than I can say on YouTube. When you kind of go, also when you go to, I want this episode to be posted on YouTube, so I'll be careful what I say. So I don't want to totally mess with you guys here. But look, here's the argument that JD Vance especially would make, and I am sympathetic to it to some regard. You guys are a $1 trillion company. You guys get a lot of government contracts, a lot of favors from the government. You guys get special treatment. You should exemplify our birthright as Americans, which is free speech, period. Now, their fear is that, there's going to be mass misinformation. We've had mass misinformation when you guys have been doing this. Hunter Biden laptop was mass misinformation, what they said. 6 feet to slow the spread, masks in schools, shutting down schools. So instead, what we need is a robust marketplace of speech where the best ideas can win. I have no idea. I have no problem with what Elon developed on X, which is like a community note process where you can have some feedback based on the post. I actually think that's pretty healthy.
I like it too.
Therefore, if somebody posts something that is patently wrong, that is totally off the mark, then you can have like a factual response to it. The video still stays up, but at least there's a factual response with the links. I have no problem with that. Actually, I don't think that's against free speech. I think that's more information than people can determine. But to your astute point, treat us like adults. Treat us like citizens, not like serfs, not like slaves, not like servants, and allow us to consume the information that we so choose. But in the end, this is the truth. YouTube, Meta, TikTok, X, these are private companies. And even though they were given government handouts, they still are afforded private opportunities. And so it's a toughie. But I will say, though, that free speech is in a far better place on these social media platforms than it was a couple years ago.
Yeah, I think if I owned a social media platform, which I don't, I might be like, you know what, it's my social media platform, and I get to decide what content I want on it, whether it's...
But at the end of the day, the
Correct.
government is giving you privileges. And so if you've got privileges, you should also
Because of the
be...
Communications Decency Act.
Yeah, you should also
for
be
one.
accountable to allow both sides to be spoken.
I think so. Yeah, you can't hide behind it. It's a complex issue.
I agree.
Yeah.
I want to go back a little bit because
I agree.
We do have viewers that are watching this that have been banned. We actually have a lot of people on our show that have been censored. They've been banned. Can you go into more depth about what you did? I know you said you got creative and you went on Rumble and you went on different platforms, but you're stronger than ever. You are stronger than you were even 4 years ago. So censorship didn't stop you at all. So I want to talk about what you did for mindset.
Correct.
And what you did for resilience and what actions you actually took to not stop. Because I do hear a lot of people get discouraged and then they don't want to do anything about it. But you were like, no, you were a lion. You said, you know what, you're going to try and censor me? I don't think so. So share with us more details of what you did, how you did it.
Well, I love that question. Thank you. It's very insightful. So during kind of when we were in the wilderness, that's what we call it. I'm a big Christian, and there's the book of Numbers, which actually means in the wilderness. So that phrase "in the wilderness" is very important for many ways. But we were in the wilderness for a couple of years, and I remember in the spring of 2023, It was very difficult. We were being censored on a lot of platforms. It was hard to get any traction. I stood firmly by President Trump. That was when his stock was probably at its lowest, right? Nobody thought Trump could win and was all this nonsense. And so, but I still kept a very creative and firm mindset. And I remember I brought my team into a room and I said, we're not going to complain. Even though we're banned on all these platforms, and even though Elon is fixing stuff, we've got, not banned, but heavily censored. We got to figure something out. We have to be too big to censor, kind of like too big to rig, right? We have to create content that will be so interesting, that will be so compelling, that it will matriculate through the entire internet, and people will share it for us, and no matter what the tech titans do, it's going to penetrate. So I remember I sat with my team, and I asked them, I said, of all the stuff that I do, and I do a lot, I do over 200 public speeches a year, I do 2 hours of radio a day, I travel the country, I do all this stuff. I asked them, I said, of all the stuff that we do, what is the stuff that is most likely to go viral? And they said, well, Charlie, honestly, going back to your roots, and not just doing these campus events where you give a speech, but go with your card table and just take questions from these students for hours on end. And I said, you're right. So basically what we did, starting in the fall of 2023 all the way to today, is I visited well over 110 college campuses. I did over like 400 hours of campus debates. Wow. And we would just post these things online. And it was so overwhelming. And you guys have probably seen the videos, or your audience has. I mean, they're yeah. Well, yeah. Thank you. They're hard to get away, right? So the strategy that we embraced is we're going to outwork everybody. We're going to have so much content. We're going to put it all up on the internet, and everyone will do the work for us. Everyone will edit it. They'll splice it. They'll talk about it. They'll text it. They'll message it. They'll comment on it. And so actually the censorship was a forcing function for me and for us to get even more creative, to push more boundaries. Where prior we were really relying on traditional communication methods, just sitting in a studio and talking. I said, no, we got to get out into the streets. Let's make it interesting. Let's make it, very provocative. Let's have the most insane college questions go to the front of the line. And I was doing that prior, but nothing at that scale, nothing at that magnitude, nothing at that kind of infrastructure. And it's very interesting. All of a sudden, we were doing that. Then we stumbled a year ago, spring of 2024. We stumbled into, it was kind of the election was heating up. And I was used to doing these campus events, and like 30 kids would show up at lunch, and I would debate a couple of them, and they would go, all of a sudden I'd start showing up at university campuses last spring, and like 100 kids would show up, and like 200 kids would show up. And then the fall came during Trump's election, and like 1,000 kids would show up. And then 2,000 kids would show up. And then this last spring, as you guys might have seen, 3,000 kids are showing up, and 4,000 kids. I mean, no exaggeration, billions of views. And so, again, as a Christian, one of my favorite verses is Genesis 50:20, which is what the enemy meant for evil, God will use for good. So the enemy meant to censor us and to intimidate us and to just try to suffocate us, and it ended up being a tremendous blessing.
Did you have a plan B? I mean, it wasn't the only idea you put on the whiteboard.
No, I mean, part of it also was, hey, let's do long form interviews like Joe Rogan. And we did all of it. But the thing that just worked the best was like the good old gritty, grassrootsy Charlie out there. And it kind of fits my whole brand because it's the truth. I didn't go to college. I'm not an overly pretentious guy, right? I'm not I try to be very well read. I am an autodidact, right? But I'm not really big into titles or formalities. I'm kind of just tell it like it is. Let's get into the essence of the thing. And I kind of embodied that. And look, the other thing is that people found it very compelling because, and they still do, one of the hardest things you can do is go into an environment with no notes, no idea what they're going to say, and a lot of the people in the audience are there against you. And so it created, very hostile with remarkable entertainment value.
I want to ask a question. Okay. So it's fun to watch these. Sometimes you're like in suspense, like, oh shit.
Thank you.
that was a crazy question. What's Charlie going to say, right? You know? So do you think that...
I love it.
So do you think that it became almost like a sport, you know, like, you know, you're watching the MMA fighters, you know, is the audience, is it a good mix of like people against you and people for you? So is it almost like,
Who's there?
Do they feel like they're going to watch a good verbal fight? Is that what it is? Like, give me some psychology behind it.
That's exactly right. And I didn't quite recognize this until about 8 months ago, where when people started to show up, you know, they wanted to see, you know, the Rumble in the Jungle. They wanted to see Frazier versus Muhammad Ali, right? They wanted to go see the great heavyweights of UFC kind of fight it out verbally and to try to get into the arena. And it's really fun because, look, I love it. It's my favorite part of my job. Out of everything that I do, my favorite thing I get to do, and I do a lot of stuff. I get to hang out with the president. I go to the Oval Office. I'm very blessed, right? But the thing that, if you said, Charlie, what's the one thing that you hope you never gets taken away from you, is the unpredictable kind of gladiatorial match that happens when I enter into the Coliseum, right? You know, you never know what they're going to send you. You never know what's going to come of it.
I don't know why anybody would even want to go up in front of Charlie. That's like a suicide.
But I think that's part of the excitement for them, you know, is that Charlie's here, and I know my question is going to be the question that stumps you, right? Is that what it is?
That's right. Yes, that's right. And by the way, the audience is so overwhelming in our favor. Unless I did go to Cambridge, and everyone was against me in Cambridge, England. But that's okay. That's a separate issue. But everybody was for. I go to these campuses, and thousands of kids are in favor of me. And it's really overwhelming and very humbling. But yes, so it's really interesting. So if you're a liberal, why do they keep on coming up to the mic? And they do. And it's amazing. Part of it is that they want to be famous because they know that the video is going to be seen by a lot of people. And number two, they want to be the guy that proved me wrong. And it really is advantage them. Even though I come with no notes and, you know, on the appearance, it looks like Charlie has the advantage, right? He's been doing this for 13 years. I do it professionally. I'm a good debater. I know my stuff. I've debated professors at Oxford, Cambridge. I've debated Gavin Newsom. I've debated Bill Maher. I've debated professors at Florida State, University of Florida, Washington State. Like, I've debated the whole gambit, right? However, it's actually advantaged student in one way. I don't know what they're going to bring up. They have unlimited preparation time, and they can have a phone in front of them. They can bring notes. They could bring a friend. So it really is in some ways advantage them more so than people realize.
I like that. They could phone a friend, huh? I like that.
I tell them you could bring up a whole group of people if you want. That's right.
So the moral of this story is, when you're on the ropes, you got to go to your war room with your leaders and figure out, all right, what are we going to do? How are we going to turn lemons into lemonade? And come up with all kinds of ideas and work the system somehow. Find the angles. We had a guy on the show recently. You might know him. He owned a gym in California, and he was shut down during COVID. And next day, and arrested. Next day, he shows up, and he started accumulating all these fines and violations. And he was a lawyer by training, and he went and looked into all the new regulations that the state had issued, and he saw the physical training places were not limited to the number of
PT. PT.
Right, physical
therapy.
Physical therapy establishments were not limited in terms of the number of people that were there, and mask requirements and all that. So one of his members, was a doctor, and he got him to sign prescriptions for every single one of the members that you need physical therapy. And he became an overnight physical therapy establishment, and he stayed open. Very clever.
Well, yeah, he did. He refused to shut down. And so I think the moral of the story for anybody that is successful in whatever cancellation journey, because literally the government was canceling businesses, not allowing them to open because of, the scamdemic that was going around. And this was happening mainly in blue states, right?
Only, yeah.
Mainly. It was, of the, red states, we were fine.
We're lucky enough to be in Florida.
And so, it's really that is the desire to, okay, you want to shut me down, I'm going to fight harder and I'm going to get creative, and I'm not going to bow down to you just because you said you can't do this or do that. And I think that's a very valuable lesson.
That's exactly right.
Is that something you share?
I think that's right. And
Go ahead.
no, go
no,
ahead.
please finish the question. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. No, go.
No. Yes, and so the greatest form of cancellation is self-cancellation. When you decide you're done, when you surrender, no one can actually cancel you unless they kill you, or they put you in jail or something totally extreme. But I mean, you look at, again, I have great. I'm very close with the president, and I think he's amazing, and honored to call him a friend. And you think of what he's been through. They tried to take his business empire from him, facing 700 years in federal prison, smeared, slandered, shot, almost shot again. The only way that he was going to lose was if he gave up. And I think that is so inspiring, because that is ultimately what the enemy wants from you. They want the white flag. They want surrender. And it's incumbent on us to never give up.
You know, one of my dreams is to have President Trump on this show, because he has probably the most canceled story in the history of mankind. And Bobby Kennedy, who is a friend who has said he'll be on, so we're trying to get him on relatively soon. These guys are an inspiration to me, because they've been through the ringer like crazy and rose from the ashes. Their stories are remarkable.
Yeah, and I think if you think about all the shows that we've done, the same theme has been to fight. It was just recently I was watching the Queen Esther story with my girls. And if you think about her story, right? She had to stand up.
Share the story.
This Queen Esther's the story of, where they tried to eradicate the Jews because of one guy who didn't like the Jews.
Haman.
And, Queen Esther was Jewish, but her husband, the king, had no idea because she was an orphan. And she had an opportunity to make a change, to do something big. And she knew if she were to speak to the king without permission, she could have been killed. He could have basically banished her and killed her. But because of her saying, no, I'm going to fight and I'm going to say something, she literally saved the Jews. She saved them with her voice, and with her commitment to fight.
And for such a time as this, as it says in the book of Esther. That's exactly right.
Exactly, and that's what her cousin said. If you're not going to fight now, you were born for this. And so the message I try and give people is we were born for this. The time to fight is now. Not tomorrow, not yesterday, now. And if we allow them to continue to do what they're doing, they will do more and more and more. The Jews could have been completely obliterated if she did not stand up and fight back.
That's right.
This conversation is very United States of America centric. I think that people living in other countries don't even have a choice to fight, or it's so socialist. Do you have any thoughts on that? Let's say you were living in I don't know, France, for example. Just to pick on France. What would you do there if you were just a citizen who lost his voice for some reason?
It's such a good question. So again, I just recently traveled to the United Kingdom, which is a husk of its former self. It's very hard to see what the UK has become. Do you know the United Kingdom arrests 30 people a day for offensive social media posts? You guys would both be in prison by now.
I'm sure.
And
30 people. Yours are offensive. My posts are not that offensive. You're the offensive one.
30 people. That's right. 30 people a day. 30 people a day that are arrested for offensive social media posts. So what do you do about that? I don't have a great answer other than you have to try to win elections and then change that. And I want to also just speak to the American audience, and I'll go back to international. Everybody watching, do you know how lucky you are, how blessed we are to have the speech protections that we have? Yes, we might be censored on social media at times, but we have it so much better, everybody, than these other countries because it creates demoralization, it creates dissension, it creates division.
Lack
and
of
so
ambition.
the only solution that I've come up with, which is a very radical one, and I did my best to get arrested when I went to the UK and I failed, but which is to try and you need to get a mass movement of millions of people in France or the UK, and you basically just say you can't arrest us all. And you just need to just push the law to its logical extreme, and you have to overwhelm the system. It's the only solution that I have, but they are the thought police. It's happened all across continental Europe.
Well, look at the convoy truckers in Canada. I'm sure you're familiar with that.
Correct.
I loved it.
Very.
It was great entertainment. We supported them. They got all the way to, I don't know where it was, Ottawa or something like that. And man, they
Ottawa.
got shut down so harsh, so fast. They locked up their bank accounts. They froze the funding. And then that was it. It fizzled. It went away. And that was a mass movement.
Yes, and this is where we are different. And that's why, look, there's something special, there's something divine, there's something inexplicable about the United States of America, which is that there's something where we dig deep. You understand how miraculous it is that Trump became president? I hope everyone understands that. In Canada, they go after the truckers, the country just kind of takes it. France, in the United Kingdom, they do Brexit, and now they're repealing it, and nobody cares. Like, oh, okay, fine. In America, we don't put up with that. And Trump was our symbol that we don't put up with it. More than anything else, it was just a symbol that, no, the people are still in charge and not you, and you're going to have to take it. And so pretty awesome stuff. I don't lie, so I'm not going to lie to your audience. It's really dark right now in other Western countries when it comes to freedom of speech.
Yeah, I mean, I never imagined Canada to resemble China as close as it does.
I thought they were like us, and I'm not alone.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We thought
for sure.
Yeah, it showed their true color. All these countries showed their true colors. Australia, they had no clue that Australia was wired like that.
You came to our school, so you know a little bit about our cancellation journey. I stood up.
Very impressive.
Against the COVID shot, and I did not want my teachers to get it. I did not want our kids to get it, and they really tried to cancel me from here to Russia.
Be careful what you say, by the way. I found a YouTube video, so just edit yourself.
Okay, but they tried to cancel us from here to literally Russia. I mean, they were camped outside our door.
The media.
They were grueling. They were absolutely monsters. But I don't know if you know this, and this is what's even crazier is the federal government called me up. They're lawyers, part of the Disabilities Act. It was the FF something, I don't even remember the name of the branch. And basically said to me, we're considering indicting me, basically for not wanting the teachers to get the shot. And I go, what do you mean? I never fired anybody.
Unbelievable.
They quit on their own. Yeah, but it doesn't matter. They say to me, it doesn't matter. We have teachers that quit that are very upset that you didn't want them to get the shot. I go, but I didn't fire them. Do you understand what I'm saying? You cannot find one teacher that I actually fired. I did quarantine one. I did. And she still works for me today, But I go, but schools all over the country were firing teachers if they didn't get it. They were firing them. So you're going to go after me and you're not going after any of them? So anyways, I had my attorney sitting there. And
her attorney advising her to handle it in a certain way, which...
My attorney was kicking me under the foot because the lawyer that was on the other side of the camera was a Chinese guy, a Chinese lawyer working for the federal government. Mm-hmm. And I looked him on the eyes in Zoom and I said, the last time I checked, we are not officially a communist country. So you cannot tell me what to say to my teachers. And I'm not a public company. I'm a private school. Okay? So he says to me after this, okay, well, we're going to get back to you and we're going to let you know what we decide to do. I'm like, you can get back to me all you want. I will spend millions of dollars in legal fees if I have to. I will not comply. I am not going to allow you to bully me, right? Okay, so fast forward Fast forward, he calls me back with an offer. I don't know, months later, weeks later, whatever it was. You want to know what the offer was? For us to pay $80,000 in fines, okay? And for 5 years, we're on probation and they get to watch our every move. And I was like, what?
Wow.
Tell me the crime that I've committed, first of all, because you still haven't told me. Okay? So anyways, I told them,
Unbelievable.
I told them if I have to go to jail, if I have to do whatever it takes to show the world that I'm not going to stand down and you will not bully me, I'll do it. And I'm not paying the $80,000. So if you want to indict me, let's go.
She told him to pound sand, basically.
Incredible.
Yeah.
6 weeks later, they dropped the charges.
Good for you.
Good for her. Yeah.
But
Amazing.
but more
God bless
people need to do that. More people need to stand up to these bullies. And you know what? You might get arrested. You know what? You might serve time. But at the end of the day, what are we alive for if not to stand up for our rights?
I love our country. I still believe
That's
that
right.
we live in the best country on earth. By the grace of God, we're just lucky to be here, and the streets are still paved with gold. So I have very little patience for people who feel entitled, and your life's journey can change in a moment's notice, and we have to stand in our truth, whatever that may be. And people need to grow a spine. This does not come naturally to me, like maybe to you, Charlie, or her. I had to learn to live in my truth. And the next time something comes along, I am going to stand firmly, knowing that my life might get pretty difficult. Maybe my assets will be taken away. I have no idea, but I know I have to live in my truth. I have to do what's right. Why? Because if I don't, it's a terrible example for my kids, a terrible example for everybody else, and then the bullies will have their way. So we have to stand up for ourselves. Yeah. We have to.
So my question for you, Charlie, is for people listening to this show who are scared to speak their mind, who are scared to do something. What advice do you have for them?
It's a great question. The cool thing about courage is that it actually doesn't require any talent. It is just a choice. That's it. You have to choose to be courageous. It's a very unusual thing where a lot of things in life have to do with, well, I don't have enough money, I don't have enough. No, courage is different. You could just choose to be courageous. You could say, today, I'm going to be courageous. And everyone knows what courage is. Courage is doing the right thing when you don't know how it's going to work out. That is courage. So you do the right thing when there is some aura and some element of unpredictability. For example, there's nothing courageous with us doing this podcast right now. It's pretty awesome, right? It's fun, but there's really not like a ton of downside. But you know what would be courageous? Courageous is what your story is about potentially going to jail. You don't know how that one's going to work out. Courageous is showing up on a college campus where, they might shoot us or they might scream at us or, So when there is risk, when there is uncertainty, that is when courage comes in. And it's a great question you ask, and I don't quite know the answer, so I'm still trying to figure it out. How do you create more courage in a generation that is so lacking it? The best answer that I can give is that we must find other role models and find other stories of the past of courageous people and raise our children in those stories. One of the reasons why I think we have a lack of courage is we've gotten rid of some of the stories that built the West, from King David to Abraham to Winston Churchill to Abraham Lincoln, and from Donald Trump. Some of the great heroes that have built our civilization, men and women full of courage. We need to teach our young people about that.
You bring up a great point. Just that my wheels are spinning as you're talking. I think we need to introduce some curriculum into our school, Centner Academy. Yeah. We teach them grit and determination, but I don't think we're teaching them courage.
Courage, that's a good one.
Right?
And that's the reason why I was reading the story of Queen Esther to our kids. I wanted to teach them what a role model of courage looks like. The definition of courage. It was literally a decision that could have meant death, and she still chose to speak up. I have another question for you.
And courage is what? Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead. Tell me, courage is what?
No, I was going to say courage is one of the highest. It's one of the highest of all the virtues. Aristotle said courage is the greatest of all the virtues. Without courage, there are no other virtues. It makes a lot of sense. If you're not courageous, then you cannot have temperance, you cannot have prudence, you cannot have honesty. Courage is the virtue that begets the other. But please, your question.
My question is for you. What have been the blessings in disguise? First, of course, besides the one you gave us already, which was being canceled off X,
Yep.
that was a major blessing in disguise because it allowed you to, forced you to be creative, forced you to think outside the box. It forced
Bingo.
you to open more channels. Any other blessings in disguise that you have from what you've been experienced over the last past few years?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you a big one. That at the time it felt like the world was falling apart, but it turned out to be a great blessing for me and amazingly the country, which was when Donald Trump didn't win, whatever you want to say, back in 2020, right? It was messy, but he did not remain as president, let's put it that way. And that ended up being a great blessing and made our movement stronger and made us really, understand why we're fighting for and what we're fighting for. It was a blessing in disguise that made Turning Point USA a better organization. It made me a better leader. And it really made us dig out of an immense hole and bring us all the way back to the White House.
That's a great answer. Why don't you do a little shameless plug for Turning Point? Turning Point was a tremendous factor in Trump winning the election. Maybe give us a couple data points on how that actually played out, Turning Point's contribution to that. Do you understand the question?
Yeah, sorry, you cut out you just cut out for 1 second. Can you repeat that? I'm not sure what happened.
Yeah, I'll say the question again. Why don't you do a little shameless plug for Turning Point? Turning Point was very influential in President Trump winning the recent election. Give us maybe some data points or anecdotes of Turning Point's influence and how that came to be.
And the fact that you were out there on the ground.
So we had well over 1,000 ballot chasers in the key battleground states. We chased hundreds of thousands of ballots in Arizona, Wisconsin. Arizona, where I am right now and where I live, was the best performing swing state for Donald Trump. Nearly a 7-point victory, nearly 200,000 vote victory for Donald Trump. And so what we did on the ballot chasing side was enormous and historic. Also, though, what we did with young people, we believe made the difference. If young people would have voted the same way that they did in 2020, then Donald Trump would not have been president. Let me say that again. If young people would have voted the same way that they did in 2020, Kamala Harris would have become president. We went to college campuses. We organized them. Young people moved in a dramatic 20-point swing. President Trump won the youth vote in Michigan, largely thanks to our outreach and what we were doing. But also the president deserves the enormous credit. We were able to play a small role. And the whole world was against us, and all the odds were stacked against us. And we were able to accomplish something historic and vast of great magnitude. And again, so if anyone wants to get involved with Turning Point USA, we believe we are the most effective, the greatest culture transformation organization in the country from a high school standpoint, a college standpoint, and from a political action standpoint. And a lot of people say that Turning Point played one of the most decisive roles back in this last election, and the data proves it.
And where can our viewers find you?
TPUSA.com or also Turning Point.
We'll put it in the show notes, but go ahead and give us some.
TPUSA.com or Turning Point Actions, TPAction.com. They can also check out my website, charliekirk.com. Also the Charlie Kirk Show podcast. We do 2 hours live every day at 12 Eastern. People are welcome to support and follow us.
So I have another question for you. What are your thoughts on what in the world is going on with this Elon Musk, President Trump debacle? I need to hear what your thoughts are.
I bet you know both, sure.
I know them both very well, and I like them both. I hope that they find some remedy and reconciliation. I'm actually bullish that they will. I first just have to say I'm so glad Elon bought Twitter and bought X. He just deserves such credit for that. Some of the accusations he's been throwing towards Trump are unfounded, and I don't like what he's been saying. The Epstein thing is just outrageous and ridiculous. I don't want to get into that, but it's not good. I will say, though, it's a war of words. I think things are going to calm down. I don't think there's actually the schism that people think. And look, President Donald Trump, he's created such an amazing movement. Elon certainly helped, but President Trump deserves the credit when all chips are down. But the left would like nothing more than from a big war of the world's wealthiest man and the world's most powerful man. So I think things are going to simmer down a little bit. And I think that these two titans are going to make peace soon.
Maybe you can be the mediator in a room to get them to, hug and make up.
Right.
Since you know both of them,
Kiss and
maybe
make
you
up.
could help make that happen. You think?
Hey, well, I don't know if I'm that powerful, but I do know both of them. I have a good relationship with both of them. I've spent a good amount of time with both of them. Look, men are funny. Men don't hold grudges quite like women. Men can fight one day and insult another, and then they'll go get a beer the next day.
That's true.
Where women will remember women will remember something negative said about them 25 years ago and hold that grudge
That is very true.
for another decade.
Yeah.
I could agree with
You
that.
know, you're an amazing guest. I really enjoyed our time with you. I do want to be clear. This is not a right-leaning show. It doesn't matter what our perspectives are. There's people that are being canceled all across the spectrum, falsely accused of sexual misconduct, or we had a guest on here who went to prison for 28 years for a murder he didn't do. I mean, that's like one of the ultimate cancellations. So for our audience members out there, we intend on bringing on all kinds of people, all flavors of cancellation.
Of course.
I just want to put that out
Yeah,
there.
definitely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys, and thank you. We appreciate that, and you guys are great patriots, and I love the Centner Academy. Want to visit again soon, and this is a great honor. Thank you both.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Charlie.
you. No,
You're the best.
we really appreciate having you on our show, and you've been amazing. And thank you for all that you are doing for our youth. And thank you for being so bold and brave
Thank you.
and sharing some incredible insights with our viewers. And you have a quick question for him?
Absolutely.
Oh
Thank
yeah.
you.
So what do you think of this show, Charlie?
Is this Oh, this is for Instagram, right? Okay, got it.
No, not yet. This is not for
I love
Instagram.
this
This is
show. I love
this-
Erased.
This one's not for Instagram.
okay,
This
I'm
is just
sorry.
for the show. Let me ask it again.
Ready to go? Yeah.
So what do you think of this
Okay.
show, Charlie?
I love it. People should watch it. It's fun, it's provocative, and it's principled. You should check out Erased. I love it, and you guys will really enjoy it.
Thank you, Charlie. Have a great evening.